Awesome. It's noon. Thank y'all for being here. So today we have a fantastic panel of some local professionals who are also accredited PR professionals to help demystify the APR and the process of getting your APR. So can you shift to the next slide for me, Joel? Awesome. So here is your panel and your moderator, and I'm going to start. We're each going to introduce ourselves and just tell you a little bit about why we earned our APR and when we did. And I'm Kim Marks Malone. I'm the associate. What am I? I'm the Associate Chair for Undergraduate Studies at the University of Memphis in the Department of Journalism and Strategic Media. Say that 10 times real fast. I actually earned my APR back in 2005 when I was still on active duty in the Navy. And I earned my APR at that point because I was doing solely Navy public affairs because I was on active duty. And I wanted to build a bridge and network with professionals and become more current in industry standards and industry trends.
I'll go next. Hi, I'm Patrice Guilfoyle. I am semi-local. I did graduate from University of Memphis, but I am communications director at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. And I earned my APR in 2012 because, as a lot of professionals in public relations often do, I transitioned from journalism into public relations. And I just felt like I needed that grounding, that foundation in the principles of practice, to feel confident in the advice in the work that I produce, but also to be strategic in my communications efforts on behalf of my organization. And number two, it was just the people that I admired, the people who were mentors to me in this profession, all had their APRs, and they encouraged me, which we were about to do with you today, to go ahead and take charge of that and make that part of your ultimate professional development. So I did that.
Hi, this is Joel Frey. I work for ALSAC, the Fundraising and Awareness Organization for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. I earned my APR just a year ago. In fact, it was 1 year ago on the 20th of April when I took the computer-based examination and passed. And I had always thought about getting the APR over the course of my career in public relations and strategic communications, but it wasn't until I met Kim as a graduate student at the University of Memphis and was going through the integrated strategic communications program there and learned that I could go for the APR as my capstone project. And that ultimately was the impetus for me to start the process and get that and go through and finish it up. I'd been thinking about it for a while, but that ultimately led me to it.
Awesome. So Patrice, I wanted to kick it off with you and have you talk about why should folks want to earn their APR?
That's a good question.
Do we want to do I'm sorry. Do we want to do a quick agenda, Kim?
Oh,
review the agenda quickly?
Sure, why not? I forgot about that one. So today, what we're hoping you come away with is Patrice is going to talk about why to earn your APR. We're going to tell you who's eligible. It's some loose guidelines for who's eligible to do it. We're going to tell you how to apply. We're going to tell you the panel presentation questionnaire, which is a huge part of the whole process. We're going to talk to you about how to prepare for that, what happens during that, why it shouldn't be a thing, why it should not be feared. And then we're going to tell you all about the computer-based exam. Joel has taken it recently, and he's going to tell you about his experience with that exam. We're going to have some Q&A, and then we also are going to provide you with some handy resources. And this presentation will also be available to anyone who wants it after this is over with. Now I'm going to kick it off to Patrice to talk about why to earn your APR.
Okay. Thanks, Kim. Wholeheartedly, I have functioned in various APR chair roles over the years since earning mine, and I have been really vocal in my support for this. First of all, as the slide shows, you're part of a small percentage after earning the APR of those professionals who went through that process. And by the end of it, I have no doubt, if you're on this call, wherever you are in your career, you're going to make that one of your top goals following that. And it's also a good career identifier of where your strengths and weaknesses are. We go into this business, and it's one thing whether you majored in PR or communications in college, or whether you made the career transition as I did. Real world issues and problems kind of ground you in where you are as far as the skills and abilities you have for your organization. So it's a good way to go through the process, to study, to prepare for it, and then feel really strong in I was going to use the SKAs, but I don't want to get into that. I'm talking APR lingo. Your skills and your knowledge and your abilities to do your job. And it helps to develop you as well in those gap areas, because we all have strengths and weaknesses, and it helps you identify those and to prepare yourself for those for the real world. And it helps lift the profession because you're bound by your ethics, but you're also bound by continuing education, which you'll hear more about as well, to keep you up to date and prepared for the future as well. So it just overall, I think earning the APR is good professional development. It takes your career to the next level, whether or not your employer knows what an APR is. They do value credentials, and they do understand what it means to have ongoing professional development. And this is what this will provide for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrice. So everyone on the call is probably curious, and hopefully you're all, planning on earning your APR, but let's talk about who's eligible to earn the APR. There's some loose guidelines that you need to have at least 5 years is what they prefer, practice in the field. You need to actively be engaged in PR work. So in a job where PR is a percentage of the job that you do. You could also be a faculty member or an administrator who is working, like if you're teaching in public relations like I am, or if you're an administrator in an accredited college in a department like the Department of Journalism and Strategic Media. We have the APR plus M for any friends who are on the call who happen to be active duty military or working in a government job where you're dealing with military public affairs. So all of the services have a huge civilian public affairs contingent. So those folks can also earn the APR plus M. So we're all in PRSA. It's a PRSA virtual panel, of course, but there are other organizations that have members who are eligible to earn their APR. And there's a participating group of organizations who are members of the Universal Accreditation Board. And the UAB is actually who administers and oversees the accreditation. A lot of folks think that it's PRSA, but it's really the UAB, and PRSA is a member of the UAB. And then you have to apply, of course. We'll talk more about the application process here in a few minutes, but there is an online application that you submit requesting to earn your APR to PRSA. At that point, you pay your fee of $385, and that covers your everything up through the exam. And some chapters, like our chapter, if you're a PRSA Memphis chapter, you can actually get that $385 kind of refunded to you. It's a scholarship opportunity for us. And then once you do all the application, you'll do the application, you'll get an email or a letter back that says you are accepted to earn your APR. Then you'll go through the whole process. And at the end of it, as Joel will tell you, you find out if you got your APR or not, and then you actually get an official notification from the UAB at the end of the whole thing and welcoming you to the community.
And I can attest, Kim, I did receive that $385 back last year, and it went straight back to my credit card. It was awesome.
That's always nice. So, and I'm going to let Joel take it off as far as talking about how to apply.
Yeah, so this slide really is just sort of a nuts and bolts. Like Kim said, you will go when you feel that you're ready to go on your APR journey. You can go to the PRSA website, that accreditation.prsa.org link, and that just takes you through the application process, the fee. And after you go through that, within a couple of days, you'll receive a letter like the one I received there on the right, which basically just assures you that, yes, you've been cleared to begin your APR journey. We're ready for you. And you have a year to do it. At that point, you're on the clock essentially. So last year, when I went through the APR process, I sort of timed it with my last semester of grad school, the spring of 2024. Went through the application and knew that I would have until the end of the year to do it. So you can take the whole year. You don't have to take the whole year, but and you can get an extension too in some cases. But keep in mind that it is a year-long process once you receive the letter that you see here on the right. On this next slide, though, I think we're going to talk about a few things to consider before you decide that you're going to get the countdown clock going.
So the first
Yeah.
thing I was going to.
Oh, I was just going to say hello, but go ahead, Kim.
No, I was going to tell you to talk to Patrice. She's our APR chair. She's your one-stop shop, great person to get in touch with, or any of the APRs in the chapter, really. We're happy to help anyone out who's looking to apply.
And I did drop my contact information in the chat. You can email me if you're thinking about it. I will tell anyone, I encourage, if you're thinking about it or where you are in the process, we try to keep that a private conversation because there's enough pressure without everybody knowing that you're going for this process and emailing you and tagging you all the time. So feel free to reach out to me personally on that.
Yeah, and then a tip I have for if you're thinking about doing this or you're ready to do it, I recommend a lot of people they wake up one day and go, I'm going to earn my APR, and they run online and they apply. And my recommendation would be don't apply right away. Get with Patrice, do this 360 audit, think about what you're going to do for your panel presentation. We're going to talk about in a few minutes. And don't actually go online and apply for that until you're almost ready. Like you've got the questionnaire filled out and you're almost ready to do your panel presentation, because that's going to save you your counter starts, your year starts when you get your letter back from PRSA, and all the stuff is publicly available that you need to do all the materials you have to gather. And if you do that, then you've given yourself more time. Your year doesn't start until you're ready to actually start really studying and going through it. That's my tip.
Did our friend James Barnes join by chance?
I did not see him.
Okay. I think there may have been some confusion with the dial-in. I did send it to him, so we still may see and hear from James. But in the meantime, I can take conducting this notion of a personal 360. The APR and going for the APR is definitely a commitment of time, and you'll want to think about your professional commitments, your family commitments, and how all that will fit into it. There's study required. There's reflection on what you'll want to do for a panel presentation. There are different cohorts and groups that you can join. For me, this was the capstone for a grad school program. So I sort of found myself in that mode of studying and taking classes. And that was sort of a natural escalation for me. If you haven't, if it's been a number of years since you've taken any sort of online course or gone through any sort of test experience, it is very similar to that. And there are a number of hours that you'll need to invest into it to successfully complete it. So that's, again, just something to think about before you hit the application button on the accreditation page and have your countdown begin to tick.
I have to remember to unmute, but yeah, to add to what has been said by Kim and Joel, that one way that you can help make sure you're prepared for whether it's the questionnaire or the exam is to find yourself an APR mentor or coach. There are some offerings online which will provide some resources at the end of this presentation, but also within the PRSA Memphis chapter. We have several APRs who are more than willing to pass on their pearls of wisdom to those who want to pursue this process. And also they're good people to bounce your questionnaire off. Before you submit your questionnaire for your panel presentation, it's good to like run it by somebody who's gone through the process, and they can give you tips on how to improve it or some areas that you may want to add or take away from, making sure you're following the 4-step process. So it's really beneficial if you have a mentor or a coach to walk with you through this journey.
Yeah, and along those lines too, when I was going through the process just a year ago, there are different online study courses that you can enroll in. There are different resources that various chapters, including PRSA Memphis, offers to join people together that are considering the APR, that are going to be trying to gain the certification at the same time. There was for years and years and years, a gentleman by the name of Michael Henry worked in conjunction with PRSA for an online study cohort that is actually about to end, and PRSA is sort of going to reimagine this group that met weekly throughout the year in different sessions. I found it very helpful. I know others have been a part of that as well too. It's good for networking. It's good to kind of go through all of the different modules and study of each of the KSAs that are tested, and to give tips and advice on all of the different sections of the APR. And it was kind of neat as you were going through that too, people would inevitably pair off, and geographies were recognized, and people that you didn't even know that might have lived in Memphis or close to you were also going for the APR. So it was a wonderful way to network, and then to also create some avenues to study together and to quiz each other and to kind of test each other throughout all parts of the process.
So the heart of your application is the panel questionnaire, which is what guides you to pull all your materials together. It's going to lay out all the things that they're looking for when you do your panel presentation. It's going to make sure that you are walking through the 4-step process, the research, planning, implementation, and evaluation. And it really is a case study that you're going to put together of something you have done. And there's a couple ways you can do it. If you're in an agency, or you work in an organization where maybe you haven't owned the entire process from start to finish, but you're on a team that did it, you can still use that for your case study, but you just need to address the sections when you're doing it. You can address the section. So maybe you're not in the research area, but there was research done. And you could say in your questionnaire and your case study, although I wasn't part of the research team, this is the research they did, and this is why they did it, just to demonstrate that you do understand research and what it's for. The same thing as if you happen to be an educator and maybe you're not working in the field right now, you can use your educational experience and the classes you teach to build that case study if you'd like to. So this is the hardest part. And this is the thing that I say that you should probably go ahead and download this for the PRSA website and start working on that and putting that together before you hit that apply button. Hey, James, welcome. You want to take it up from here?
Yeah, I can. And I apologize. I'm having some video issues here. But Kim did a great job. Basically, you want to take some time from a questionnaire tips. I think she just gave a great overview of the formal process. But then if you think about, okay, I think I know what's expected, but just some additional tips, focus on the campaign questions first. When I was working on my APR, I did a case study that I was extremely familiar with. It was for a nonprofit. I just didn't want to get into a situation where the company I was working for at that time sharing any potentially sensitive information in a full-blown campaign. So I was pretty comfortable with the nonprofit program. Saving Lost Kids, and I use that as my campaign focus. And I started with those questions first because I had a great deal of knowledge about that campaign. And then you want to, if you don't do this, you're going to get yourself in a world of trouble. You want to make sure that you impose a word limit, and that's really important. Obviously, many of us are professional or started our careers off as professional journalists, but in this case, you want to provide enough information and no more. Keeping in mind that the average candidate spends 8 to 10 hours on these responses. So it's not one of these things where you can just kind of jump into it and think you're going to knock it out in a day or two. It really requires some really in-depth thinking, utilizing the RPI process. And then you want to apply, again, that RPI framework. That's the whole reason I think from an APR standpoint, our whole accreditation is built on this RPI framework. So all of your information needs to align with the research, planning, implementation, and evaluation aspects of the process. I actually took the exam 3 times. One when it first came out back in the early 90s, late 80s, and it was longhand written out. It was a horrible process, but that's what we had at that time. And then I tried the boot camp, and that didn't work out too well. They added some new wrinkles on what they were expecting from a technology standpoint, and so there were some challenges there. And then I said, well, third time's a charm. I went through Mike Henry's online course, and that basically that program has cracked the code on APR accreditation planning and preparation. And so that's the framework that was ultimately very successful for me, as well as the local PRSA chapter and working with them and utilizing their knowledge, skills, and experience. So make sure you apply that RPI process, and then you want to find a mentor. That is very important. Elizabeth Whittingham, for me, was a mentor. Of course, I did reach out to some past folks, my former professor, Joe Trahan, for example, and several other folks that had just recently gone through the exam, or not so recently for that matter. And so those are just 4 tips that you can utilize to help you kind of get through this process.
Awesome. So after you do your, you complete this questionnaire, the next step in the process is to schedule your panel presentation. And I'm going to let Patrice talk about how that works.
So how I like to, it's kind of daunting when you just hear the words panel presentation. You think, oh my gosh, I'm going before the firing squad. But what I like to refer to it as, and what I tell people, it's more of a professional conversation you have with peers. There are 3 people, 3 APRs, who will sit with you and you present your case study. Basically, the case study that you submitted would be excellent to go through, and it's your time, as the slide says, it's your time to shine. It's your time to explain to them the process that you went through, making sure you hit all factors of RPI based on your written questionnaire. And then you can go through the process. What I tell people is I'm always leery of, if you do it in person, any kind of any kind of PowerPoints, because technology can go wrong. It can get you nervous, and then things get out of whack. So if you have handouts, a printout of what you're going to present, just talk to them about it. They will ask you questions after your presentation and just have more of a conversation. It's like, what made you go in this direction rather than another direction? Did you consider research on this aspect of this project, and what made you go with this? So it's really more of a conversation to get an understanding and make sure you are well equipped to do well if they vote to move you forward in the process because they want to make sure you're successful. And after you make your presentation, they will recommend to advance or not to advance based on your knowledge, skills, and abilities. There goes those buzzwords again. And they're like some of your biggest cheerleaders after you've gone through the process. You know, you can reach back out to your panel and just thank them for being there, and they will. I'm telling you, I received thank you notes or congratulatory notes from my panel after I said, "Yay, I passed the exam." So it really is not as daunting as you may have it in your head. It's more of a conversation.
Yeah, and they'll get your panel, you'll submit your questionnaire, your big case study to Patrice, and she provides it to the panel members. And so what they're going to do is look through it before they talk to you. And that way, when they're having a conversation with you, if they see any areas that they feel like they might want to just make sure that you're ready for the exam, it gives them a chance to help you look for any weaknesses in areas you might need to study extra for.
And another note is I've had this issue pop up in my past where somebody will say the week before, like if we're having a set panel, I think I'm ready. I'm like, well, you have to give at least 15 days, I think, for your panel to review your questionnaire, just to be fair to you and to be fair to the panel. So you need to have that in your timeline as well. So I would advise not to stack up, your panel presentation. Then I got to take the exam, within a month, because that's going to put more pressure on you, and you don't want to have that.
Awesome. So after you get advanced from the panel presentation, your big day arrives and you're going to take your computer-based exam. And we're going to let Joel tell us all about his experience with that.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, there's like Patrice and Kim were just saying, you present your panel, and in my case, it was about a week later. I got this awesome letter from the PRSA that said, "Congrats, you've been advanced." And from there, there's basically 4 steps to consider before you actually take the test. One, you have to pick a day, and depending where you are in that year-long journey, you'll have maybe some time to give yourself the opportunity just to reassess where you are and how you're feeling. But there's really no right or wrong answer. For me, I waited about 3 weeks between the panel and from when I took the test. I've heard others wait maybe 6 to 8. And the advice that I got when I was in the online study course was, don't wait too long, because after you give the panel, as it relates to research, planning, implementation, and evaluation of projects, you're really going to be at a high level at that point. And that's a big part of the test as well, which I'll talk about here in a second. So while it's fresh and while you're sort of in that mode, you'll probably want to pick a test day closer to the giving of your panel and to when you receive this letter. You'll schedule that, and the test is as of last year, the PRSA and the UAB has moved away from the testing center model. So for years and years, it was all conducted in a testing center. You'd make an appointment, you'd go to the testing center to take it. It's all one-to-one online now. You'll receive a link. You'll pick the place where you want to take the test. That's actually important as well. Home, office. For me, I actually came onto the campus of St. Jude. I found a small, quiet conference room. I dialed in. There's an online proctor that is with you who essentially monitors your taking of the exam, and you'll definitely want a place free of distractions. So that's something to think about. And again, that's kind of a new wrinkle that the PRSA and the UAB have instituted here recently. And then you'll just want to study. I have been in groups with PRSA members who have of all stripes, of all who have seasoned professionals with 20+ years of experience to maybe those closer to that 5 to 10, and they all agree that you can't wing this test. You can't approach it with I've been in the business for a long time, and I can go in and take it. You'll really have to put some time in to study and apply all of the principles that you're learning. So here's just an exam, a breakdown of the exam. That picture of me is in that small conference room here on the campus of St. Jude. I like to have a little fun on Instagram, so I put this in a story. That was me waving, getting ready to take the test. But how it breaks down, it's 171 multiple choice questions. You're graded on 132 of those. So PRSA and UAB they'll throw in 39 beta questions that they'll use as sort of a test to see if those questions make sense to count on future examinations. It's pass fail, so 62% plus. That equals out to 82 correct responses. So keep in mind, there's a pretty high margin of error when you're taking the test. It's not a traditional A, B, C, D, E, or F, but just straight pass fail. You'll have 3.5 hours to take the test, and it's broken into 6 groupings of those KSAs that we've alluded to here over the course of the last 30 minutes. That's knowledge, skills, and abilities. The biggest chunk of that is the RPI, research, planning, implementation, and evaluating of programs. 39 of those questions are graded. Leading the PR function is one of the KSAs. Managing relationships, applying ethics and law, managing issues and crisis communications, and understanding communications theory. There's just a few questions on there too. And basically you take the test over the course of those 3 hours, and you'll be tested on each of those 6 KSAs. One of the things that they'll teach you as you go through different courses and different cohorts is being able to identify which KSA is in that particular question. The memorization of answers really doesn't apply for this test. It can a little bit with the theory related questions, but even those, in my experience, were tricky. I guess that's just all to say that you'll really have to put the time into learning the KSAs, being able to identify the KSAs, and then really having to display a high level of concentration over that 3.5 hour time limit while you take the test. So after you take the test, you'll get a notice immediately whether or not you passed or failed. And I will tell you all, during the course of my 3 hours and 7 minutes, I wasn't so sure if I was going to make it. It's definitely a roller coaster ride, where you kind of get into it and you feel like you're in a pretty good groove, and you're getting onto that 82 question limit to achieve the pass rating. But there are moments too where you just kind of have to keep that in mind and move on and not spend too much time on any one particular question. But yeah, I am happy to report that I did pass on my first time, and was very excited because not only did it mean I had earned the APR, but it sort of in a way served as the final for my master's program at the University of Memphis. And I texted Kim right away too, and she too was equally excited because that meant I didn't have to take the test again probably in a week to try to get my master's as well. So but again, it's a hard test. You get this letter from the UAB and PRSA almost immediately, and you can start using your APR credentials right away. You get a cool certificate in the mail, a cool pin, and the test is definitely a culmination of a long, hard road. But I'll be honest, not everybody passes. I met a lot of people. Kim and I were talking about this before, but it's about 7 out of 10 don't pass. So it is a hard test. I won't sugarcoat that. And the advice that my mentors and others that I heard throughout the process gave was, hey, look, it happens, but don't give up. That's the key. You've worked a long way to get to this point of taking the exam, and having to take it a second or a third time. There's no shame in that whatsoever. So the best things are you'll get a readout from the PRSA right away, which will give you a percentage breakdown of where you did well on the test, and maybe some of those KSAs where you need to put a little more time in. And that can really help you decide, okay, these are maybe I didn't do as well in the crisis section, so let me go back to that KSA and put a little extra time in there too. It's also a great time to go back to your coach and mentor and have them hype you up in a way that maybe only a coach or a mentor can do. And then you can take the test. There's not a long waiting period. You do have to pay another fee to retake it. But you can take it as soon as you feel that you are ready to roll with it. So I think that's going to lead us into Q&A, right, Kim?
It is. So Andrea had asked why people, I was just looking at the UAB, I'm a member of the UAB, and our most recent statistics are it's about a 49% pass rate.
Oh, wow.
From
Okay.
last year. But it's still, it's a really hard test. If you're someone who doesn't take tests well, it can be very intimidating to take that 3.5-hour test. And I'm glad that I already took mine, and I did mine at a testing center, because if I had to do mine with the one-on-one proctoring, I think I would be so nervous that I wouldn't know what to do with myself. But that's the thing. I mean, all the questions they're beta tested before they go on the test. They're created by APRs, and folks just like us. So they go through a really rigorous process before they make it to the final APR exam. But just as a whole, it's just a very, as Joel said on his slide, it's a hard ass test. So, which is why we want to say study, 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 study. But I was looking to see, I didn't see any other questions in the chat, but anybody else have any questions? Feel free to come off on mute or raise your hand or.
Tell you the proctor, he's very likely in another country, and he watches you the whole time. And there were a couple of instances where I was rereading the questions out loud, and he had to remind me that I couldn't read the questions out loud. I had to stay silent.
That would drive me nuts.
So yeah, you definitely kind of have to get yourself into that mental, it's a high level of concentration over the course of a 3.5-hour time period for sure.
And the one thing I did want to say too is, so you earn your APR, and you're an APR, but it's not a one-time, one and done. You have to recertify every 3 years. You have to renew your accreditation, and you do that by earning continuing education credits. And you can earn those all sorts of ways. You can be, if you serve on a board in your chapter or the district or national, you earn credits. If you are the APR chair, you earn a whole bunch of them. If you sit on a panel presentation, you earn CEUs. If you go to conferences, if you teach a class, I mean, there's a plethora of ways. The hardest part is that you have to have, every 3 years, you have to have a set number of ethics related CEUs. But the website has links to that and talks about how you can earn that. So over the course of the 3 years, it's not hard to earn them. You just have to remember that that's something you have to be thinking about. And you'll get a letter when you're getting ready to, or your renewal's coming up. You'll get a letter from the UAB that says, hey, it's time to renew. And you do it all online. It's really easy. It used to be you had to mail in like these spreadsheets of all the stuff you've done. But it's not a hard process. It's just something to remember that this is a lifelong learning evolution. So you do all the work up front and you learn all this great stuff, but we also want to make sure that you're staying in tune with current trends and the industry along the way. Andrea asks, is there anything you wish you had been told or knew before sitting for the exam or selecting your case study? Anybody?
I'll kick off. I think it'd be great to hear from everybody on that one. But on the case study, I think it's important to remember you can go back way in your career if you want to. It's not necessarily something that has to be recent. I worked at Travelocity earlier in my career and was a part of the team that launched the Roaming Gnome advertising campaign, and that was almost 20 years ago. But I had saved some of the information on that campaign, and as I looked, the thing to keep in mind is just make sure that it fits to that RPI model. That if ideally there's a research component and you can show planning and implementation and evaluation, but don't feel like it's something that you've done recently, and really it's a great way to reflect on your career as a whole. And then on the test, I think if I would have definitely I probably would have started the process a little earlier. If I relate it to my, I would have thought I would have done a lot more work maybe the fall semester as far as putting my panel together, and then maybe had just left like the last 90 days for study, and getting into that mentality too, because it did feel a little rushed for me, but my case was a little bit different too because it was kind of tied to the master's degree as well.
Yeah, Elizabeth had made a great point that so when you go to the PRSA website, you're going to see like a bookshelf, and it's all these recommended books that are almost all textbooks. And we just keep adding to them, it seems like. And you don't really need all the books that are suggested. A lot of people pick out their favorite ones, and you can talk to people and like, what was your favorite book for studying? And you can also access them through the library. You don't have to go out and buy them all. But use a study guide that you can get for free on the PRSA website, and then really focus on those areas that you don't feel comfortable with. So if you're somebody who's a nonprofit and maybe you're not really comfortable with the business end of PR, the business case for PR, maybe that's where you focus. Or if you're somebody who never has done a lot of research, maybe you look at their bookshelf and you find those resources that really help you beef up your research or your research or your evaluation or whatever piece you need.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to read the next question, but go ahead.
I think for me, had I internalized the RPI process a lot more, significantly more, we do so much in public relations, and I had a lot of experience already, but really just focusing in on those 4 key areas really helped me to coalesce my thinking around exactly what was expected for this test. Once I understood that and had a really firm grounding in that, not that I wasn't doing research planning, implementation, or evaluation before, but really understanding it from the test taking perspective and case studies, that's when it kind of clicked for me, and helped me out tremendously.
And Kimmy had asked if there were any sessions that are focused solely on preparing case studies or sessions that review good example of case studies. And Elizabeth jumped in and said that she leaned on her mentor for that. And that really is going to be your best resource. Your mentor, or, build yourself a stable of mentors, and lean on those folks and ask them to review your questionnaire as you're putting it together. You don't have to wait until it's all done to ask somebody to look at it and to give you tips and ideas on maybe areas that it needs to be beefed up, or if it's, you're going down a good path.
Just one other quick point too. You don't have to wait until you're taking the test to start using the RPI process. As a matter of fact, if you start integrating that into your current work processes now, that will get you so much further along the path because it becomes real and it will force you to start thinking in that way. And if you're thinking in that way, it makes this test a whole lot easier. So I just thought it would be worthwhile to share that as well, that you don't have to wait.
So Catherine says she loves how it's framed as a reflective practice, and she's wondering if or how the process changed you as a PR practitioner, or how it now influences what you do in the field today.
I can start on that, responding to that. It did change how I view public relations. I'm going to be honest, let's face it, sometimes the things we have thrust upon us, last minute deadlines, things that we weren't told about but brought into at the last second, you don't have time to just sit there and go, okay, I'm going to write out my strategic plan using the 4-step process, and I'll get back to you tomorrow. So, but it is for significant projects, it has helped me for long-term and sometimes short-term projects to sit down and think through all the steps, all the research. How did somebody else do this? What does the research say about this topic? Planning who the audience is and how they like to be reached. Those things, I think, having that time on the front end just makes your results so much stronger in the back end. And let's face it, when you're talking to your boss, or if you have plans to move into a management position, you really need to be able to show the ROI on your work. So it definitely has helped me rethink how I approach different subjects, how I approach different projects that are given to me. But even in those quick projects, I can quickly go through my, in my mind going, okay, I need to make sure I have these areas addressed for PR practice.
Yeah, I would just add real quickly to that, the process as a PR practitioner, we all get very, to Patrice's point, it's a day-to-day grind, and sometimes tactics take over, and we think more about the press release, the interview, and the output, and we forget that really great work, and when we're doing our best work, it's not about the output, but it's about the outcome. And the APR process, I think about that almost every day now. And it's probably something that I hadn't really given the right amount of consideration until I did go through the APR. And everyone else too that I've gotten to meet kind of comes to that crossroads too, where it forces us to think about the great outcomes we've had as PR practitioners and less about the day-to-day output.
So I did want to put a plug in. So if you're someone who loves professional development and continuing your education, so our program is a little bit unique, our master's program, in that we now allow you to complete your APR as your capstone project. But if you have your APR and you decide you want to get your master's degree, not only our program, but there's several other programs across the country that will give you class credit for your APR. It will count toward credit hours toward your degree. So, don't have to come here for it. Love it if you would. But there's a list on the PRSA website of higher education places that if you have your APR already and you just start your master's or your PhD, they will give you course credit for it. So just another reason why you might want to get your APR.
About some resources, Kim.
I dropped I dropped the link. I dropped all of our LinkedIn's. So mine and Joel's, Patrice's and James's LinkedIn's in the chat. And I dropped the link to the PRSA.org website in the chat. And then if we can send this out to everybody, but we also have a list of links here. Some of them are to the PRSA site, some of them are to other resources, and also to the Universal Accreditation Board, our LinkedIn page, which has links to other resources too. Highly encourage you to join there's an APR professional group on LinkedIn you can join. There's a UAB group I think that you can join on LinkedIn. And then of course, we have links to lots of blog posts and things like that can help you. It is APR month. So right now there is a plethora of resources floating around and people talking about getting the APR and what it meant to them. So now is a really good time if you're thinking about it. I know Elizabeth had a few things she wanted to talk about. If nobody else has any other questions, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth.
Thank you. All right. We have, there we go. You see that?
Yes.
All right, so if you have any questions about the APR process, or even if it's right for you, please contact Patrice. She is our APR chair. And I also want to encourage you to sign up for our incoming in-person program for May 8th. It will be held at Youth Villages on Shelby Oaks Drive. They're hosting the location. And we will have Robin Goodman sharing her best practices and how communications can help drive change management. So go to PRSAMemphis.org, register, let us know what you want for lunch, and join us next month. We are also coming up on choosing our inaugural scholarship recipient next month. This is very exciting. So PRSA Memphis has a scholarship for Mid-South students that are interested in a career in communication. So stay tuned for that news. And you can also help support the scholarship by donating at prsamemphis.org, or you can scan the QR code. Lastly, thank you all for joining us. I look forward to seeing you in person on May 8th to talk about change management, and have a great early start to your weekend. Thanks all.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.